Yes, ma'am.
Because otherwise, well now, or you can sit at the end of the table like this. You want a chair? You want to sit down. Can you use this?
I don't have the thingamajig.
Wow, okay, let me get you the stool. You perch on the stool.
Okay, and once a month on Mondays. What is the once a month on Monday?
That's Lonnie's book review.
Is it a Sunday? I mean, is it a Sunday? Is it a set week?
It's the first Saturday.
Oh, come on.
We've had to change it a couple of times because Lonnie had surgery and different things.
Well,
But
you have my number.
And of course, you're not going to stay in one place.
I know.
You know that. Okay.
I asked Lonnie when the next day is because I never.
Boss says he's ready, so if he's ready, I'm ready. Good morning. Welcome to our First Methodist Church. We're so glad to be here this morning. Our church has such a rich and wonderful history, and as church historian, I just have loved getting to learn more about the church, and there's always more to learn, and there's always something new coming up. But today's lecture will be strictly on the stained glass windows. And I can speak louder. If you cannot hear me, I will pull out
Your
my
teacher
school
voice.
teacher voice. For those in the back who are, so anywhere between just, if you cannot hear me, please just give me a wave and I will increase the volume incrementally. So, our stained glass windows have a rich and wonderful history, and I'll just start at the beginning. Our church was finished, the sanctuary was finished in 1924. Of course, it did not look like it does today. This is the result of many remodeling through the years. But I love to start at the beginning because the beginning at the sanctuary, when it was built and completed, the windows have a story of their own. The windows in this church, as you notice, if you look to your right, you will see that there are 5 double windows along the east wall. These windows are all constructed with the same construction. So when I refer to the double windows, these are the windows to which I'm referring. These windows, at the time the church was built, were plain frosted glass. The fleur-de-lis at the very top in the center was lightly tinted with a rather greenish color. The rest of the window was clear frosted, so it was very plain. All of the windows were the same way. These were the old-fashioned sashed windows, with sashed and weighted, so the windows would be raised for all church services. There were screen doors on the front, so of course ventilation was extremely important. So all of these windows would be open. There are on the east side of the building, there's a total of another 8 were built, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 were on this side, and there was actually another double window right here behind our piano. Because at the time that the building was built, cross ventilation was extremely important. It's the only way to stay cool in South Florida. And our church footprint was exactly as it is today. The door that is open, the wooden door to your left, leads to our fellowship hall. Now, at the time the church was built, that was the exterior door. There was nothing there other than steps, a little step going down to the ground. So that was an exterior. The 2 doors in the front of the church, the one on the left and the one on the right, had very small classrooms in those. And in the back of the church, okay, way back here behind me, up in the choir loft, which just at the time there were 2 small windows. All platforms had been added, so everything was much lower. There were 2 windows along the back with a rose window above it. The current setup evolved over the years, the major renovation being the addition of the chimes and the pipe organs in 1944. That's a different story. In the very back of the church is what we always call the rose window. And we'll talk about, that's the very largest window in the church, and we'll get around to that. So that is the original construction. During the times of the remodeling, to be able to use this wall, this western wall, became a wall that we used, well, originally it was a classroom, now it's the restrooms. And so, and then this window was taken out to enclose the hallway when we added on the new additions. So those windows came in and out at different times. But the gist of the story is, by the time we finished all of our remodeling, we have 12 double windows and the one large ascending Christ window. And this configuration is, where we are right now. I don't anticipate any changes. So the story begins, that was the beginning of how the windows were. And they were, when Reverend Cruson, Larry Cruson, came to our church as pastor in 1990 when he arrived. Of course, I love pastors because they look at things with fresh eyes. So he walks in and he looks around and needed some sprucing up. Looked pretty shabby. At the time, we still just had the little plain frosted windows. And the years had not been kind to the windows. There had been a layer of protective film added. It gets quite warm in the east when the sun is coming up in the summertime. By the time church started at 11, it was pretty hot over on that side of the church. Most of us tried to sit over here, kind of away from the heat. But so there had been a film on it. It was all coming off and darkened. So Christy took a look at it and said, "We need to do something." Everybody said, "Well, Pastor, you come up with an idea, and we'll see what we can do." So Reverend Cruson gets busy, and he finds a stained glass window studio in West Palm called the Shearer Studio. And he makes contact with Richard Shearer, the owner of that studio, talks Shearer into coming over here to take a look at our church. And he and Shearer hatch up this plan for the stained glass windows. It didn't start as the 12 disciples, but when Richard became involved in the project, and they were discussing what type of windows we wanted and how we wanted it to look, it dawned on everybody, well, we have 12 windows. That's 12 disciples. That's perfect, and there's our theme. So we started out with the 12 disciples, and of course the ascending Christ. So the church got to work on that. The boards, all the necessary approvals were met, and the people agreed that that's what we would do. We would start raising money for this particular project. 1991, we began collecting money, and families were just eager. Wonderful. So the system was set up. So when I'm talking about the windows, I'll tell you about the disciple to whom that window is dedicated. But I will also mention that there are donor plates in the main frame between the two sets of windows, which recognize the families that contributed to those windows. Some of the windows are in memory of loved ones, some of them are in honor of loved ones, and some are just given to the glory of God. So the donors are listed, and we put the whole story just behind every one of those donor plates, the stories of the families that were here at the time, their grandparents, their parents, and I can't go into all that detail, we'll just do the windows. But if you are interested in any of the names on those plates and would like to discuss those people, they all hold a very fond memory for me. By the time these windows were designed in 1991, because I was an adult teaching school here and raising my children here, so all the memories for me are just like your memories of your childhood and growing up. I remember the old ways, but I do love what we've done with the sanctuary. To me, it's just exquisitely simple. So we're going to begin with, now you can do this, you do not have to get up. If you want to, some groups, I'm going to start at the front of the church, and I'll start with Thomas, and I'll work my way all the way around to the ascending Christ, and then all the way around to the end where we finish up the 12 disciples. If you want a closer look at it, come on up, and otherwise I'll stand closer to the window and just point out the things that I want you to see. My laser pointer doesn't work in the daytime very well. I tried using it. If I could do it from here, like I did when I was teaching, I would just shoot it over there, but that doesn't work. So I'm going to physically move over and just touch you down. I am, apologize right now, I am not an authority was descended upon them when they were sent out to preach the gospel. But we won't get into any of the debate about, we'll have to go with the accuracy. The references that were used by Reverend Cruzen and Richard were, they used about three books. Yeah, they had 3 books that they used from the Preacher's Library, and if you'd like those references, I'd be happy to give them to you. So so we just went with, here's what the 3 of them, basically their consensus, and we'll just go with that. There's nothing, I have not found anyone who's found an inaccuracy in any of the windows. So if you find something that is inaccurate, let me know, because, history has a way, history is interesting. We read what was written at the time, and we find mistakes in it. Years later, I'm still finding mistakes, But that's the way history goes, and history is then revised, sometimes according to new evidence or new stories. So it does not upset me at all. I love the whole idea. So I'm going to walk up here, and I will talk to you about Thomas. And I have to take my notes with me, so I don't get anything wrong. Now, Thomas, and this is not okay, if you want to come closer, just come right on. Thomas was not the first disciple called, but this is the order in which the windows now appear. Okay, so they were, when we put them in, they were put in a particular order. Oh, y'all have to move over a little bit so the people, because come up here behind Dawn. Or sit on the front view. There you go. Can y'all see? Okay. Originally, the beginning window was Peter. This is the first window that was finished and completed, and Peter was in the center, as Peter should be. He was the rock, as Jesus referred to him. So he gets the center spot, and then we built in the windows, but all in a very tight time frame. There's not a significant difference in when the windows went in. In the periods of 1991, the time it was completed in 1995, they just pretty much went 1 window a month, 2 windows on some months until the project was finished. So, funny story. The windows we had to do some major repair work. Somewhere around 2015, 2016, we found out that this east wall was about to collapse from water damage. Huge, major problem. So all of these 5 windows had to be removed. The company came in, repaired the wall. The stained glass window people took the stained glass with them back to the shop, cleaned it up, and when everything was done, they reinstalled it. We had to have new woodwork and everything. Quite the project. That was loads of fun. For a couple of years, we have plywood in these windows, which were painted with a Christian scene. But, you do what you have to do. So, they come again, we get the windows repaired, everybody's just delighted to go windows again, and life is wonderful. Well, my older sister comes to visit, and we're sitting where we always sit, and she looks over, and she said, "Where's my window?" I said, "Excuse me? What do you mean, where's your window?" She said, "That's not my window, that's Thomas." I said, "Well, where is your window?" "Down there." I said, "Whoa." Now, this had been maybe 2 years, the project's been finished, before my sister comes to church and realizes that the windows have been reversed. Well, I thought you probably don't know my sister, but she threw a fit, a real hissy fit, and she was going to pay to have those windows moved. And I said, "Oh, no, you're not. The windows are staying where they are, and the story will just change. So you just have to go along with it." So I think the windows down there, but we're going to start down here with Thomas. So here we go. So Thomas was, of course, he was called right on. We're only doing the original 12 that were called from the Gospels of the New Testament. There is some dispute that there were others, but 12 is a very significant number in Christianity. It was the same number of the tribes, so it all fits. Thomas, here we go. Thomas's windows, the way that I'm going to talk about the structure one time. Decorative, decorative, decorative. So the only significant difference within any of these windows are the symbols that are used on the right panels and the left panels. Well, there's another interesting story. So last year, I was getting this together, and I realized for the first time that when they installed these panels, not only did they switch those two, these have been flipped around. What was the inside is now the outside. And so when I started my speech, I'm looking over here on the right-hand side, and those are not the correct symbols. And I look over on the left, and I was like, it's bound to have been reversed. And again, it doesn't matter. It just shows you that things change as you remodel. Little things happen. And so I'm having to get used to the new configuration, which is not a problem. So we're going to start, because I have to reverse it. For Thomas, we have spears and arrows. Most of our disciples, as you know, died very cruel deaths. They were martyrs. John was the exception to that. But so in many of the windows, you will see weapons that were symbolize their martyrdom. Tradition has varied from disciple to disciple. We're going with the idea that he was stabbed or shot with arrows, close enough. Here's Jesus' hand with the nail imprint, because you will remember that Thomas was the disciple who doubted that the Christ had been risen. And he said, you'll have to give me proof, which of course Jesus did when he appeared before the disciples. So doubting Thomas was of course the disciples were very dedicated, but he has picked up the doubting Thomas because of his statement about the resurrection. You'll see many different permeations of the crosses, the various crosses, and of course every cross in every window represents Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. So every cross is the crosses. Although some of the disciples may have been crucified, some and certainly were, but the crosses in our symbolism always stand for Christ, the resurrected Christ. So, and the forgiveness of all sins through our Christ. So those are those symbols. Up at the top, it is reputed that Thomas was a carpenter and a builder. So his occupation is represented by a hammer and a square. And the bottom side, you'll see a church that is has an East India, the country of India, look to it, because that was one of the regions in which Thomas was sent to Christianize. So he has the
and where he is believed to have died.
And where it is believed to have died. We believe that he was actually kneeling and praying. One of the traditions is he was kneeling and praying in India when he was arrested. Some say he was killed right then, some say he was dragged off and killed, but anyway, martyred in India. All right, so moving on, this is our John window. John, turn my page. John, again, I'm not going to mention all of the crosses, and there's some repetitions, so I forgot to tell you also, when you look at every one of our stained glass windows, you'll see a fleur-de-lis at the top of each of the windows. So that's a repeated theme throughout the windows. In fact, the way that Richard designed them is the theme of the boundaries, the colors of the glasses, the pattern of the purples are all repetitious. So even though the windows are all different, when your eye glances around the church, you see the uniformity of the windows. And that is a unique feature. In many churches, when you look at stained glass windows, every window is completely different and dedicated, to a different part of the church's belief. And when I walk through the large cathedrals in Europe, you kind of overwhelmed because every window is very, very different. Here, there's a sense of the sameness. So the windows are quiet stained glass windows, the way I look at them, very unbusy. The symbols are very large, and I just think the simplicity to me is just exquisite. I've personally never seen windows in any church just like this. I haven't. What's interesting is Richard Shearer was not particularly a religious person. He didn't come from a religious background, and yet he produced an artist. An artist is an artist. and he produced this design. It was talked about extensively what would be used, but it was his design, and it was approved by the church to be used this way. John window. Oh gosh, I can't get into the donors. You'll have to come see them for yourself. Otherwise, I'll be here for an hour. Okay, again, John, this is the sword with the serpent. John, again, when he was preaching, he was very a strong speaker. He was talking about how Jesus is the sword of our faith, can cut through all sins and all evil in the world, and that's what that represents. Of course, the serpent is a very ancient Hebrew symbol for sin, but the power of the sword, the power of being saved, cuts through the worst of the evil. On the bottom of the cross, this is the Bethlehem star. You'll see this one repeated. I'm sorry, this is the six-sided star. And then again, on a six-sided star in Christianity, each one of the points is a different virtue. So that's a six-sided. On the other side, the Star of Bethlehem is the five-star. When you see five-pointed star, when you see that one, that is a symbol that is used universally for the star that was over Bethlehem at the birth of Christ. So this is, and this is repeated. When you see this one repeated, again, it's a reference to Christ the Savior. On the bottom, you see a scroll. It has an iodized, it has a J on it for John. John not only preached, but he did extensive writing. So he was recognized for his scholarly approach to being a very early apostle. At the top, you'll see the eagle rising. John was, if you take a look, and you'll see the wings wrapped around him. The wings represent God's arms wrapped around John. This refers to the miracle of John being saved from the hot boiling oil in which they intended to martyr him. So he was saved from that, wrapped by the arms of Christ. So that's the symbol for John. Moving on, we have Peter. Peter was, of course, our first window. Peter is considered the rock. This particular window, with every disciple, there's stories and stories and stories, so we just have to pick out the main ones. So with Peter, again, the star, the fish have always represented in Christianity. We're a very early symbol of Christianity. It identified Christians. It identified a safe place that Christians could assemble without being persecuted. So the idea of using the fish also represents Jesus' theme that he preached regularly, that that he would make all of the disciples fishers of men. They would be the ones that would save the souls and convert people to Christianity. The fish also often represents the fact that Peter was a fisherman. These people lived and worked close to the Sea of Galilee, and that was their main industry. So it had multiple meanings when you see fish. This one is intended to be referring to the fishers of men. Also, and then on this side, you'll see a church. This refers to, it's a standardized, it's just a symbolized church, referring to the fact that Jesus said to Peter, upon you, I will build this church. I will build the church. So Peter becomes the foundation for Christianity, and the church represents him. Here are the keys to the kingdom. Again, Jesus said, I will give you the kingdom. Here is the path. This is the way you will go, and here is how you will convert people to Christianity. And again, a cross. There are different styles of crosses, but you get the idea. James is brother of John, and here you'll say down James was. He also was sent out on a commission. You'll see the scallop shells, again, have become by this time, were a very well-known symbol of Christianity. I don't know any more about the legend of the shells than that one statement. So if you know something else, you can tell me about them, but I do know that represents Christianity. down in this window, you'll see the traveler's bag. We know that all of the disciples were sent out to spread the gospel all over the world. They were not to stay right in Jerusalem where it was semi-comfortable. They had to go out and endure all of the discomforts of being out in foreign countries, proselytizing and teaching about Jesus. So they would have gone basically with the clothes on their backs, with some money, and they were to do it from faith that God would provide for them. So they traveled with their bags. Of course, they had staff if you were walking long distances, because again, these were not rich men. They were everyday poor men who worked for a living, and then when they no longer worked, they lived off the goodness of the people to whom they were visiting. So they walked where they went. Up at the top, you'll see a traveler's cap. It's a little hat. From where you are, it looks hard to see it, but it is like a tricolor type hat with a J for John. And again,
James.
John was a fisherman.
James.
James. Oh, I'm on James. James, thank you. James was also a fisherman. Worked with his brother, and again, a symbol of Christianity. Andrew. Okay, my family's window, which is supposed to be down there. Okay. Okay. Andrew, and it's going to stay right here. This is a perfectly fine place. Okay. Andrew, again, his has the two crossed fish. Again, he was called to be a fisher of men. And Andrew was also Peter's brother. So we have, a whole family there. His occupation was fisherman. He was sent out to Scotland and Ireland as part of his commission. However, he did other countries, but this is the one he's best known. He's also the patron saint of Scotland because of his efforts to Christianize that particular country at the time. And here we have that cross. That one's different from all of the others. This one is the I got to get that one straight. Okay, I've lost that one. Let me find that one. This is, I'll come back to that. I'm drawing a blank. I'll come back to it. I can't remember that symbol. It has a significance. Over here at the top, we have the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, as Jesus said that he was, and as it was preached. This is the Alpha, the Omega, the Christian. And here is the inverted anchor. All right, this anchor represents Andrew's trip across the seas to be a missionary over in Scotland and England. There's a story there. It's okay. We'll look it up later. That's the nice thing about history. It doesn't go away. Now we come to the ascending Christ. In the beginning, this window was just a beautiful window. I loved it. It was the only place in the church that really had enough color that you could say that it influenced the interior of the church. You need to look at the design of the window because you will see that there are 4 arched windows at the bottom. They would have been the traditional sash windows, and they were open for ventilation every Sunday. The top of the windows, they're topped with 6 circles, okay? And inside the circles are the flower petals. So the flower petals were this color. You can see this rose color? If I hold it up to the light, it looks a little more purple when it's this dark, but when it's up in the window and it's shining through, it looks almost pinkish. So it had this lovely pink hue. It was called the rose window. Okay? Now it also had, not only does it have the tones of that, but it had little bits of green in it. So it gave you that impression. So it was just a beautiful window. Well, there was, like in any other church, when you start remodeling, there's controversy. Everybody thought it was a really good idea to change our rose window to anything else. They thought it was okay to change all the little plain windows. That wasn't a discussion. But when it came to the rose window, it was, well, they were pretty much deadlocked on that one. But as the story goes, it came on, not only, it came to fruition. It was a beautiful design. The more people looked at it, I think the more beautiful they realized it was. And it was converted. It was, as you see, we have the ascending, we have the Christ with his extended hand, palms showing clearly the nail prints of his sacrifice. But this is a risen Christ. We serve a risen Christ, an alive Christ. We recognize his resurrection, his death, his resurrection to save our sins, but we serve a risen Christ. So when we worship, our eyes go up as we go up. And as you look at this one, your eyes are drawn upward because there's more light at the top. The sunlight coming through it is meant to represent the rays of the sun. Is meant to hold your eyes upward towards heaven, where our thoughts need to be going. On the side, there's a representation. On the left-hand side is Abraham's altar. Abraham being the founder of the Jewish faith, and also, by extension, the founder of Christianity, as we grew into Christianity. And remember the story of the altar, that Abraham felt that he was being called to sacrifice his only son on this altar. He brings his son to the altar. He has his knife ready. He builds the fire to make the sacrifice, and God stops him and says, "No, not today. You know, there is a lamb. There was a lamb caught in bushes close by.
A ram.
Use this for your sacrifice. The lamb.
Ram.
Pardon me?
A ram.
The ram. Thank you. Sheep. Ram. Thank you, Don. The ram will be the sacrifice, and your son will live. So that's the story of Abraham. On this side, you'll see the story of this is the lamb. Okay, I got it right here. Here's the Lamb of God. The Easter lilies for the resurrection, and of course, stylized cross on that side. So we have the beginnings of our faith, and we have the continuation of our faith into eternity as we morph from the Jewish faith into Christianity. All told in this window. Yes, ma'am.
What year was it that they changed this from just being a rosette?
This one was 1992 when we got this one changed. But everything happened from 1991 when we started until we got all the way around when we finished with it, right during that process. But my records tell me 1992. Okay, and again, this entire, I think it's amazing. This entire window was donated by one family in memory, and I just have to bring it up because it's such a tremendous contribution to our church. This Ascending Christ was donated by the Lois and Carl Newcomer family in their glory to God, given by them. Just beautiful. I love to tell the story of I love to tell the story because the controversy in any church is real. Got a group of people. Okay, I said there were people who were not going to have this window taken down. As a matter of fact, my dear Aunt Blanche, Blanche Hunt, not my aunt by birth, but the church aunt, found a matron of the church. You'll change that rose window over my dead body. True story. She was so opposed to it. But it went on, and the thing progressed. It's a little irrelevant, but I have to tell you this story. So, as the story goes, Aunt Blanche passed away about 2 months before Peter window was ready to be put in. So the window gets put in, and and life goes on, everything changes. And when we did the dedication for this in 1997, at the time, Bass Funeral Home, LaVon Bass was the director. They had been members of this church and underpinnings of this church, and LaVon was just noted for his humor. So he comes up to the preacher and says, "Well, should I exhume Aunt Blanche and put her under the Peter window for Sunday service?" But that was the one. But it was true. She said over my dead body, and she was not happy, but it did go on, and she did come around in time. But we love to tell that story because LaVon was a mess. And he remembered all that kind of stuff. So
How come I think is magnificent because his eyes, no matter where you are, it seems like his eyes are following.
This is true. The eyes are unique to me. I could never understand why an artist would give Jesus blue eyes. I've never envisioned Jesus with blue eyes. He surely would have had brown eyes, but nonetheless, it is true. No matter where you sit, you do feel like you are being looked at directly by the Christ. So that was his interpretation, and it works for this particular window, and it is beautiful. But I think it's very interesting that we maintained, when we switched this one over, the rose window is within and fully saved. The pattern of the rose windows are saved by the framing of these windows. So the sculptor just worked around what we had. Back over here is Philip. Philip is really hard to see because Philip is kind of hidden behind AV equipment, but that's okay. We have a story for Philip also. Philip, if you take a look on the right, you'll see Star of Bethlehem. What you can't see, and I'm so sorry you can't see it, is down below that there are the flames represent the Holy Spirit as it descended upon the disciples. There's the flames there, that one. You can see the tall cross on the right-hand side. It has, the tall cross is considered to be the Greek Greek, I got this right, Greek. Below that you'll see the fish. Philip was there, of course the fish represent the miracle of the loaves and the fish. Philip was one of the disciples that took the little boy up to Jesus and he blessed the food to feed the 5,000, that one. So, who else is in on that one? I'll think of that in a minute. But anyway, we put that in his window because he was a part of that story and that miracle. And then down below where you just cannot see it all, there's just a cross and a tomb. I don't dare move Sheila's equipment. So we just have to talk about that one. I can also show you the pictures if you'd like to look at them. Matthew was continuing the story. Matthew was reputedly the tax collector. Oh, and of course it's interesting that when I get to this side of the sanctuary, the windows are not reversed, but these windows are taken down. So these windows are the way that they were put in, whereas those were flipped, but oh well, we can manage. It is now what it is now. So Matthew, we have the tax collector, reputed to be a tax collector, so you'll see his coins, you see the dolphin. The dolphin is also a very early Christian symbol for Christianity and Christ and the faith. So the dolphin is repeated throughout Christianity as that. On the right-hand side, you will see Matthew's winged man is to represent the reincarnation. Okay, Jesus came to earth as a human and but was divine at the same time, and so
incarnation.
Incarnation. What did I say? Yes.
Not re.
Thank you. The incarnation of Christ as human and wrapped again in the wings of the Lord. Down below, you'll see again a battle axe. Most likely he was also martyred. He was in Ethiopia when he was martyred. So again, supposedly he was doing a pretty fine job of converting Ethiopia, but some of the king's enemies. The king was happy with it, but some of the king's enemies and the family were not. So they grabbed a hold of him, and according to tradition, he was martyred in Ethiopia. Coming on this end, we'll have to probably all the over to the overflow section. And while you're moving, I will have to tell you that in our church in the beginning, this was not referred to as overflow. There was a wall, a partition wall, that ran the length of this header right here. There was a partition wall here. So the whole time that I was a child, sitting in the pews, you couldn't see this particular room. This was a classroom. Okay, so I always thought it was pretty interesting as a child. I'd sneak over here and take a look at it, because you couldn't clearly see it. This was divided. And one of the remodelings, we needed the extra space. The church had grown. We needed the seating, so the partition was taken down. So as we continue, we have Bartholomew. Bartholomew. If you take a look at his representation, he has an open Bible up at the top. The knife, again, there's a knife laying across his Bible. He too was martyred. The legend says that he was in Armenia. And same thing happened to him, because it's just what happened. That people would rise up against them, and he was martyred by tradition there. The crossed rings in this one represent Christ, where Christ performed his first miracle, was turning the water into wine at the wedding. Remember that one? Supposedly, Bartholomew, by reputation, was there. Of course, not as a disciple, but as a participant. Communities were very small in this area, but that represents that particular miracle that we think. Here we have the fig tree, or sycamore tree. I'll straighten that one out. Okay, so here we have the fig tree. The fig tree is a long-standing symbol of fidelity and fruitfulness, because it's long been in that area of the world. The figs have been a staple of the diet of the people of that area forever. So figs are highly valued, and there are fig trees everywhere, although there aren't many other trees and very little shrubs that you can actually climb under. So being under a fig tree was about the only place that you could get out of the intense heat of the country of Israel. It's hot. It'll bake your brains out in the summertime. So Bartholomew prayed under the tree, as did many other people, because it was the one place you could go to, as to get out of the sun. So at the bottom, you'll see the church. This church represents the Armenian church where he was, and of course the cross.
Nathaniel and Bartholomew are the same person, correct?
Yes, they are.
So Jesus recognized Nathaniel under the tree.
And saw him.
Saw him
Yes.
under the tree.
Yes, as Joy has straightened this out. Yes, that is true. It is true. So yes, it ties in many ways. The place that Bartholomew was first recognized by Jesus, and he accepted Jesus as the Savior. So James the Lesser, not because he was smaller, he's the brother of Matthew, only because he was younger. And he was not a particularly small man by any means. As a child, I thought they meant he was like, a midget or something, but that wasn't to be the truth. You learn things as you go on. But then, and for the symbols for James the Less, of the time you see the cross, you'll see the hand that's holding the sparrow. And again, the reference is to that God holds all of us in the palm of his hand, and takes care of us as he does all of the birds of the world. He takes care of us. So that's the idea of the palm. Here below where the church, James was sent. One of the places he went was Holland. So you have a stylized church that, rather in the Dutch style of the churches. Here you have the windmill again, referring to, let me get this straight. Windmill for Holland, church for Spain. Okay, he was in both places. And then again, you have this is actually a map. If you get close enough to it, you can actually see it's a map. Not that he would have used a map, but it does show maybe some of his journeys. Judas has a window. Interesting story. When we were planning the churches, no one really wanted to buy the Judas window. Okay, now, we all, in our Christian maturity, we know that Judas was an instrument of God, just like all the rest of us, But he's not been treated kindly by history because of his betrayal. So we had quite a bit of a dilemma about who was going to buy the Judas window. So it was just decided that a bunch of us would just throw money, unnamed, no names on the Judas window. We're just all known as, this is given to the glory of God by the members and friends of the church. No names. But nonetheless, here we have Judas, and you know the story well. Judas, on the day that Christ was crucified, it was thunderstorm, the world turned dark. Judas ran, hung himself, committed suicide. His 30 coins of silver he threw out into the field, But that was his payment for betraying the Christ with a kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane. On the right-hand side, you will see the hand, which represents redemption and reminds us all that Christ forgives, and we're all forgiven of our sins. And at the bottom, you'll see the cross with the Latin symbol, the IHS, which is the Latin symbol for Jesus. Here we go. I can't ever come up with the word, so I won't even try. Okay. I'm going to do this. Oh, this is too hard to navigate. All right, we come to Thaddeus, and Thaddeus. All right, Thaddeus. His church, he was in Persia, so you'll see the ship is the representative of his travels to the Persian area. Again, the inverted anchor and the square, because we pretty much think that he was also involved in carpentry, but he traveled to Syria and was martyred there. The anchor, again, as in the other window, represents Jesus Christ as being the Christ is our anchor type idea. On this side, again, you'll see the Alpha and the Omega, the nails, the hammer, referring to the building of the churches in a concrete way, but in the theological way, in the bringing of souls to Christ, the building of the church. And then the bottom, you'll see a stylized Persian church, and again, the Latin for Jesus, the IHS. Simon. Okay. Simon, again, representation of his martyrdom, an axe, a sword. His calling to become an apostle. Instead, he was sent to Persia and Egypt. He did his travels there. Of course, he would be preaching the scroll representing not particularly the Jewish tradition, but as the new traditions were written, they were also written on scrolls. Most of us think of scrolls as just being ancient Hebrew, but it was the main form of written word at the time. Even though these men, as they were living in their lives, they didn't really take the time to write down what they were doing. They did that later on, or by the stories that they told to their disciples who faithfully recorded what they had been told. On the top, you have, again, the learned, the book, and the idea that this is Christ. On the closed book, the fish represent, I don't know why there is a book. I don't know that. Why there is a book, and there would not have been a book that I associate with that, but I don't know. Can't answer that one. I need to find it. A fleur-de-lis, a person, and the Trinity, of course, and the stylized cross. And those are the 12 disciples. Oh, now, you're welcome. Do you have questions? Now, I've tried to keep it 30. How did I do?
You did well.
Okay. That's hurried.
Do you want me to open what I call the sacristy, where they can see one of the original windows?
Well, it's up to them. Now, okay, let me put it this way. I have nothing else to do. I have finished my lecture, and so therefore, if you feel like if you've got places that you want to go and you want to go on out, please feel free to leave. If you want to stay, I will show you one of the plain ones, and I wanted to show you this one. I personally do not own these items. When the rose window was taken down, again, it was the only window that had a significant amount of color. Yeah, bye, Carol. You're certainly welcome. These were created from the pieces that came from the rose window, and different members of the church bought them. I wasn't interested in having pieces of the rose window, so I didn't get these. So I've had to borrow from my friends, but this again shows you the colors, the rich colors. But again, when these were up in the windows and when the light was shining through them, my memories as a child were very subtle colors. I think of a pink and a very light green. And when I look at the reality of what it was, I would not have recognized that as the colors, because that looks pretty intense.
but you have to remember the light coming through it really diffuses the color.
The little two little triangles on either side of the face.
Yes.
Red was
I was
yours.
wondering that too.
Significant of anything?
It is not. We had to contact, at the time that Reverend Kristen had developed the speech for the dedication for the windows, he called Richard to come over for the dedication. He said, Richard, people are asking me, what's the significance for the two colors? He said, we just liked it. I
And
just like it. I'm the artist. It has no significance. I like the color, and I'm thinking, but it's so odd because there's not, well, there is blue in the window, but not that blue. And red is really not a predominant color. We use it for a few of the crosses and some of the symbols, but it's not the predominant color. He said he just liked it.
but those openings were there from the rose window.
Yeah.
They were rose.
Yeah.
No, they were clear. Excuse me, they were clear. Those are yes, they were there. That's original design.
So they had to have
Couldn't think of anything else he wanted to put in there. And again,
Just kept up with the
he
shape.
said he just liked it. He just liked the way it looked. You know how artists are. I would not have chosen those colors, nor would I have chosen blue for Jesus' eyes. Okay, we have people who, particularly children, they think the eyes are pretty scary. You know. All right. So any other questions or things that you can add? Like I said, with the disciples, they're a whole story unto themselves. If you are interested in the families that donated, the donor plaques are in the center section. I'd be happy to talk to you about those donors. If you are interested in seeing what the original window would have looked like, I should have brought one from my office, but I didn't do that. But we can take you back to a storage room. I can show you the clear windows. Don will take you back over there. Follow Don, go past the organ, and there